Right now, you are about to do something that almost every human being on Earth will do tonight. You will turn off the lights, you will climb into a bed, you will close your eyes, and within minutes, you will be unconscious, alone, in a dark room, completely still, for roughly 8 hours. That is what night looks like for most people alive today. And for almost all of human history, it looked absolutely nothing like that. For most of the time humans have existed on this planet, the night was not a time for silence. It was not a time for isolation. It was not even a time for 8 consecutive hours of uninterrupted sleep. The night was something else entirely. And what ancient humans actually did during those dark hours is one of the most surprising, most counterintuitive, and most revealing windows into what it means to be human. Most of us have never thought about it. We assume they did what we do, just with less comfort. But the real answer is far stranger and far more interesting. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong: sleep. The assumption is that ancient humans slept the way we sleep, one long block, 8 hours, lights out until morning. But the evidence tells a very different story. Until roughly 200 years ago, before artificial lighting reshaped human behavior, the dominant sleep pattern across almost every culture on Earth was what researchers now call biphasic sleep. 2 sleeps, not one. People would fall asleep shortly after dark. They would sleep for roughly 4 hours. Then they would wake up, naturally, without an alarm, in the middle of the night. And they would stay awake for an hour, sometimes 2. Historians have found references to this waking period in documents from ancient Rome, medieval Europe, and indigenous cultures across Africa, the Americas, and Asia. People called it different things: the watching hour, the quiet time, the dead of night. And what did they do during it? They talked, they had sex, they prayed, they thought. Researchers who have studied modern populations with no access to artificial light find the same pattern re-emerging almost immediately. Within weeks, people naturally shift to 2 sleeps, with a calm waking period between them. The single 8-hour block of sleep we treat as normal and healthy is not ancient. It is an industrial invention. But sleep is only part of the story, because the thing that made ancient nights fundamentally different from ours was not when they slept. It was fire. Humans have controlled fire for at least 400,000 years, possibly longer. And what fire did to the night was not simply light it up, it transformed it. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent decades living with and studying the Kung San people of southern Africa, one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth. She analyzed thousands of hours of recorded conversation, comparing what people talked about during the day versus what they talked about at night around a fire. The difference was stark. Daytime conversations were almost entirely practical: work, food, complaints, logistics. But at night, around the fire, something shifted. The conversations became stories. Stories about people, about spirits, about the distant past and the imagined future, about what it means to be alive, what it means to belong to a group, what the world is made of, and why. Wiesner found that these nighttime fire stories were not entertainment. They were the mechanism through which culture was built, through which identity was constructed, through which values, history, and meaning were passed from one generation to the next. The campfire at night was not a luxury. It was a technology, one of the most powerful technologies humans ever developed, not for its warmth or its light, but for what it did to the way people communicated with each other. There is a theory gaining traction in evolutionary anthropology that the fire-lit night is the direct ancestor of human imagination itself. That sitting in a circle in the dark, watching flames, listening to stories, being both safe and acutely aware of the darkness pressing in from beyond. This is the environment in which the human capacity for abstract thought was sharpened. For narrative, for empathy, for understanding lives and perspectives beyond your own. The modern equivalent is cinema, sitting in the dark, a single controlled source of light, stories unfolding. Ancient humans invented that experience 400,000 years ago, every single night around a fire. But there is something else, something that sits underneath all of this. Ancient humans were not the apex predators of the night. They were not even close. In the environments where early humans evolved, the savannas and woodlands of Africa, the night belonged to other animals. Lions, leopards, hyenas, animals that could see in the dark far better than any human. Animals that hunted primarily at night, and early humans, for most of their evolutionary history, were not the hunters after dark. They were the hunted. This is something we have almost entirely forgotten. The instinct that makes you uneasy in a dark parking lot, or uncomfortable when you hear an unexplained sound outside at night, that is not irrational. That is ancient. That is hundreds of thousands of years of evolution telling you exactly one thing. The dark is not safe. And ancient humans knew it, which is why fire was so critical. Fire kept predators away, not metaphorically, literally. Large cats and other predators learned to associate fire with danger and avoided it. The firelit circle was the safe zone. Everything beyond it was something else. This created a psychological dynamic that researchers believe shaped human social behavior permanently. Inside the circle, safety, warmth, community, belonging. Outside the circle, darkness, threat, the unknown. That boundary between the lit and the unlit became one of the foundational organizing principles of the human mind. The fear of the dark is not a quirk. It is a feature, and it is so deeply wired that even now, with every light in the house on, it still stirs when something goes unexplained in the night. Now here is where it gets even stranger, because while the nights were dangerous, they were also when something else happened. Art. The oldest art we have ever found, cave paintings dating back 40,000 years or more, was made in darkness, deep inside caves, places where no natural light reached at any time of day. Researchers studying these sites have found evidence of firelight, charred remnants of torches, primitive lamps made from hollowed stone and animal fat. And when they recreate those conditions, standing in a dark cave holding a small flame, something remarkable happens. The paintings move. The animals on the cave walls, horses, bison, deer, are positioned to take advantage of the natural ridges and curves of the rock surface. In still light, they appear flat, but in moving firelight, they appear to run, to breathe, to be alive. The caves were not galleries. They were theaters. Ancient humans were not simply documenting what they had seen. They were creating immersive experiences, rituals, encounters with something that felt alive and present in the dark. And they were doing it at night, deep underground, by firelight. This means the oldest art on Earth was designed to be experienced exactly the way a film is, in the dark, with controlled light, as a deliberate act of shared imagination. We have been telling stories in the dark for as long as we have been human. It is not a habit. It is not a modern preference. It is what we are. So when you turn off the lights tonight and lie alone in the silence, you are doing something no ancient human would recognize. The quiet, isolated modern night is not natural. It is new. For hundreds of thousands of years, night meant gathering. It meant fire and voices and stories moving between people in the dark. It meant waking up in the middle of the night, lying quietly awake, thinking, while the rest of the camp breathed around you. It meant the edge of the firelight, where safety ended and something else began. It meant art made to move by flame. It meant the single most important mechanism by which humanity built everything it would eventually become. The night was not empty time. It was the most human time of all. And somewhere in the part of you that still feels uneasy in the dark, and still gravitates toward open fire, and still stays up too late talking to someone you care about long after you should have gone to sleep, that is not a bad habit. That is the oldest part of you, remembering what night was for.